what's up, y'all? My name is Millennial Smark, and I'm back at it again with another video. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do all of this in one shot, one single take. I know I'm gonna be probably out of breath when it's all said and done, but I'm gonna pace myself. We're gonna get through this. This is gonna be a fun video because we got a lot to talk about that's happened throughout the year 2024, our year of the Lord. All right. So first things first, let's get all the stories out of the way. Timestamps are down in the description box below, and also because I'm not going to highlight every award, so I took it upon myself, if you haven't already seen it, to look down in the pinned comment section down there. Yeah, right there in the pinned comment section, and I got all the awards listed below. It's kind of like influence. I did this before when I did my decade review, where it's like the categories in themselves are influenced by the Wrestling Observer, but I kind of got it set up in a similar way to how PWI does their stuff. I think the Wrestling Observer does it via voting also, but you never get the opportunity to see their voting procedures because, well, it's the Wrestling Observer newsletter. So I just did it in a similar way to PWI when they have like the 4. So it's like categories influenced by the 1, but like, you know, the actual quantity of the participants is going to be 1 through 4. But with that being said, enjoy the video. Let's talk about some of the smaller storylines, because again, a lot of stuff happened throughout the year. We had Kevin Dunn leaving. That happened in the beginning of the year. All this is in order, by the way, going off my own videos. The benefit of actually fucking reporting on everything, right? The Velveteen Dream apologizing, Dolph Ziggler debuting in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Jinder Mahal, the Tony Khan Hook Jinder Mahal stuff. You know, when Tony Khan went on Twitter and he made an ass out of himself because he tried to bury an active wrestler who worked for the competition. There's gonna be a lot of that, don't worry. Kevin Patrick, remember him? Guy, Irish person on commentary. He got fired. Sting retiring felt like it happened 5 years ago. Nope, it was only a little under about 11, maybe 10 months ago at best. Mercedes Moné, Kazuchika Okada, Rule Ospreay, they all debut. TNA, they ended up firing Scott D'Amore. That was a bit controversial, remember that? Ronda Rousey accusing Drew Gulak, almost forgot his goddamn name, a sexual assault. The city and state of Oklahoma banning Nyla Rose for wrestling within their city and state. Dave Meltzer completely destroys his credibility throughout the years, well, actually throughout the years in general, but more in particular throughout this year, by making asinine claims happening throughout. It feels like every other month Dave Meltzer was making some type of statement that completely eradicated his fucking credibility. Becky Lynch ended up taking a hiatus. Bobby Lashley ended up leaving WWE along with Ricochet. Now, obviously that was prior, but you get the point, okay? Kevin Sullivan ended up passing away. The Wild Samoans, Alpha and Sika, both ended up passing away in the same year. I know, crazy, right? A big controversy broke out in the locker rooms with Britt Baker and MJF. The Nikki Bella abuse allegations from her husband, Artem. I know, all this happened in 1 year. Psycho Sid, unfortunately passing away. The Ricky Starks drama. John Cena announcing his retirement. Odyssey Jones, fired. Ray Phoenix and all his allegations. Tessa Blanchard being allowed to come back to professional wrestling, and Rampage getting canceled. That all happened in 2024. And the best part about it is that that's all the stuff I just seen right there. One can say those were big stories, right? One bigger than the other, but for the most part, they were all small in comparison to some of the bigger stories. Now, come on, you guys didn't think to yourselves that I was going to leave out the big stories. We had to get the small ones out of the way first. In my opinion, we had 4 really big stories that pretty much took up the entire year, or at least the consequences in itself has taken up the entire year and has been the pinpoint topic of discussion throughout the entire year, as you can tell by the timestamps. So we're going to kick it off with the story that pretty much started it all, in my opinion, in the beginning of the year, and that was the Cody Rhodes controversy. Now you may be asking yourself, Devontae, what the fuck are you talking about, the Cody Rhodes controversy? He's WWE champion. There is no controversy. See, that's where you're wrong. Because when Cody Rhodes kicked off the year, he ended up winning the Royal Rumble. And when he won the Royal Rumble, typically that gives you, the guy with the Royal Rumble ticket, it gives you the advantage to go to, wrestle against the champion at WrestleMania. The only problem is there was a bit of a roadblock directly in front of Cody Rhodes. That roadblock happens to be super duper bald, super duper cheesy, super duper scammy in some ways, and happens to be one of the greatest, biggest, most important wrestlers in the history of the business, that being Dwayne The Rock Johnson. The Rock ends up coming back, and he ends up yoinking the shit out of fucking Cody Rhodes and his stupid ass title opportunity. He said, "Give me that title reign, bitch, because I need it in order to get my opportunity." Which pissed everybody off, because they're saying to themselves, "Hey Rock, how the fuck do you get to waltz yourself back into the title picture as if you own the fucking wrong choice of words." Because unfortunately, The Rock ended up technically somewhat owning the place, or at least a big chunk of it, because he ended up being one of the investors, and now he sits on the board of directors. And he felt to himself that he could just insert himself via same word, his position. Potato, tomato, tomato, your mama, vagina, pussy, dick, whatever. And the whole thing is, everybody got pissed off because we live in a society nowadays where, again, meritocracy is above all, depending on the meritocracy. In Cody Rhodes' case, hey, buddy, you're not bigger, you're not more powerful than The Rock, but The Rock is more bigger and more powerful than you, figuratively and literally. How the hell does he just get to come and yoink your fucking position out of your hands when you've done everything to earn that position, alright? You've done the work, you put in the grind, you were injured and you fought back, and here comes The Rock to just take your fucking title shot away, and to make matters much worse, kayfabe wise, you look like a complete and utter fucking idiot. You go out of your way to just give it to him. You just say, "Rock, here's my asshole, spread cheeks, ghost seat all over your fucking cock. Just go ahead and ram it right up my ass," is what Cody Rhodes, the character, essentially told The Rock to do. And people were confused by this because they're kind of saying to themselves, yeah, obviously from a realistic standpoint, we all know why they did it, because Rock and Roman seems like a bigger deal on the marquee, right? And they've been building this up for a while. But at the same time, though, at least for the Cody Rhodes character, it's like, dude, what was your reasoning for even doing anything like this? And to be quite frank, maybe I missed it, but I don't think we've ever got closure to any of that as to why Cody Rhodes, I feel like he did give an explanation, but it was like super fucking weak. Like, I feel like he did it during that press conference at WrestleMania. Like, I can't really tell you anything substantial, at least anything that makes any sense as to why he did it. But nevertheless, though, we're going to gloss right over that because Cody Rhodes ended up getting his spot after all. He just waltzed right back into the picture and he was like, "Rock, I changed my mind, bro. I know you're a big movie star. I know you're one of the biggest wrestlers of all time, but it's 2024 and the fans, they speak for me. They speak for my daddy." Which, by the way, I hope you guys understand, and I hope you guys know, and I don't know if you guys realize this, but Dusty Rhodes, he's Cody's dad, and Cody, he loves his daddy, and he needs to do this for his dad. Nevertheless, though, Cody Rhodes, like I said, randomly waltzes his way right back into the title picture after The Rock randomly waltzed his way into his own figuratively tired or stupid ass picture, whatever. And then all hell starts to break loose, right? We get one of the best stories going into WrestleMania, quite possibly top 10 best story-driven building moments going into WrestleMania ever, right? Cody Rhodes, everything is all topsy-turvy. 1 minute he's getting his title fucking yanked from him, the next minute he's getting the back, the next minute The Rock is turning heel and now he's reverting back to his Hollywood Rock character. He's a heel. Did I mention he's a heel? Because Rock as a heel is always good for business. He's now a part of the fucking bloodline. Now we have Seth Rollins and he's involving himself in all of this too. Rock is terrorizing. He's harassing Cody Rhodes. He's beating the dog shit out of him in the parking lot. You got blood, you got cursing, you got swearing, and you got The Rock being all around fucking awesome. The only problem with that is that The Rock was all around fucking awesome, right? And you have Cody Rhodes over here who's going back and forth with Dwayne being awesome. And it kind of took all the shine off of the guy who was champion, who was Roman Reigns. So it's like The Rock inserting himself into this just fucked everybody up left and fucking right. Like no one knew what the hell was going on, right? And then you bring in all the other stuff because Seth Rollins, he ended up getting a knee injury on the road to WrestleMania, having this match against Jinder Mahal of all fucking people. And he was supposed to wrestle CM Punk at WrestleMania, but Punk got injured in the Royal Rumble. And all this stuff started occurring. And then Seth Rollins ended up sticking his nose inside Cody, Rock, and Roman's business because WWE needs him on the fucking card. And they need The Rock to have a match, but at the same time, they don't want to piss off the fans because of Cody Rhodes. If for nothing else, the reaction is gonna fuck up the WrestleMania main event. At the same time, they want The Rock involved. So they said to themselves, hey, how about we have a tag team match, put a stipulation on the line, and wallahi, Cody Rhodes can get into his main event picture, The Rock can get his main event, Seth Rollins can get his main event, and Roman Reigns can get jack shit but to stand in The Rock's spotlight inside his shadow, making sure that all his farts smell good while he fucking slinks directly behind him. And then he goes into the main event of WrestleMania and he drops that belt like a good little bitch. Good on you, Roman Reigns. But they did go into WrestleMania, and all this spectacular stuff starts to happen at night one. These guys are fighting in the crowd. The Rock has a badass entrance. They're just doing all these attitude era stuff. They're telling a great story. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is telling a great story. A story that happens to be very, very good while telling a great story. And unfortunately, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins ended up losing the match. Not the first time Seth Rollins lost anything that night. I'm not just talking about wrestling. I'm also talking about his ass virginity when referencing Becky Lynch. We go into the next night at WrestleMania, and like I said, Seth Rollins busy getting his ass pounded by Becky Lynch, who happens to be the man in the relationship, and he's also losing his championship belt to Drew McIntyre. Can't tell you which one is worse. You gotta ask Seth Rollins that. We get to the main event and Cody Rhodes has his match with Roman Reigns. It's spectacular. It's booked to all hell. It is the fucking frenzy of frenzy, extravaganzas of extravaganzas. I mean, you would think Vince Russo was on steroids booking this shit with how fucking overbooked it was. But it was a story being told, right? Seth Rollins also got involved wearing his little shield gimmick because they always have to go back to the shield stuff at least one time a fucking year, it feels like. Then you have The Undertaker getting involved. Then you have the Usos getting involved. Then you have John Cena getting involved. All of this just to help Cody Rhodes get more massively fucking over at one of the greatest WrestleMania main events of all time, right? But the problem with this is that the story has not technically ended yet, right? Because of course, we get the next night on Raw. Cody Rhodes is the champion. They're flying on the seat of their pants with the ratings and the viewership numbers hitting record highs that they haven't seen in a while because of all the stuff that happened during WrestleMania. Trust me, I can tell you as a person who was kind of siphoning off of that via his own viewership numbers, hitting some of his peaks, I can tell you those guys were fucking cooking. I ain't just talking about The Rock. Speaking of The Rock, he came out while Cody Rhodes was pretty much going through his promo, doing the whole stereotypical, oh my god, I'd like to congratulate my daddy for giving birth to a Cuban like me, and gosh darn it, I want to say thank you, Triple H, even though the last time I referenced you, there was a sledgehammer in my hand, there was a throne in my face, and I was wrestling for another company. But that's okay. Why? Because I love you guys now, okay? Now I'm sitting on top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the mountain. I'm holding the biggest championship currently in professional wrestling today, and no one can't tell me nothing besides The Rock, who comes out, and he has his own championship belt across his shoulders because he's a fucking mark. That happens to be Muhammad Ali, whose daughter ended up giving The Rock a championship belt that's faker than his fucking man pecs. Nevertheless, though, he gets in the ring and he confronts Cody Rhodes, and he starts laying down all these subliminals, essentially saying that, hey, me and you, we ain't through. So technically, Cody Rhodes' story, I don't think it's up yet, but we'll get more into that going throughout 2024, right? Now we get to another section of this story that we have to talk about, and that's Cody Rhodes' title reign as a whole, right? Because unfortunately, now granted, objectively speaking, just based off of metrics and obviously based off of his position in the company, you have to give credit where credit is due as far as what Cody Rhodes has accomplished with his reign, but that doesn't take away from the fact of how lackluster has been happening throughout 2024. He's been given criticism as far as being stagnant, being complacent, being very, very boring, being way too cookie cutter, and people are asking for him to turn heel. People are saying things such as, Cody, you're going to end up being in the same position as to where you were when you left AEW originally. You're going to end up being in the same position as the guy who influenced you to be in this position, like a John Cena. There's a lot of things that you guys are kind of heading down the road towards that I don't think you want to encounter. And Cody Rhodes in his title reign is suggesting that that's the path that they're probably going to go down. Cody Rhodes being the new John Cena in more ways than one. The only question is, just because Cody Rhodes has had one of the most boring reigns in probably professional wrestling history, through no fault of his own, I will say that there are some producers who probably don't have his best interests at heart. Maybe some upper echelon guys who want to make waves and, kind of make the current go up and down within WWE while not rocking the boat too much in TKO, if you know what I'm saying. But the criticisms are valid. And I've talked about this before in reference to Cody Rhodes. His championship reign, like I said, metrically speaking, and I'm not talking about metrically speaking as far as audience retention, because after WrestleMania, the numbers did drop down drastically for WWE, whether that's Raw or SmackDown. So it's not as if to suggest that Cody Rhodes is the draw, because it doesn't really seem that way, metric-wise, as far as him being champion. But then again, also, that's all based off of booking. What does Cody Rhodes do going into 2025? How do you recapture all of that made him so, so must-see as a babyface when he kicked off strong in 2024? But then again, do you say to yourself that he kind of has the same predicament as a Mariah May in conflation with a Toni Storm, where Cody Rhodes is only as over as his opposition, right? Does he get as over on his own? Versus, does he get over as much when he's actually surrounded by legitimate superstars like The Rock or Roman Reigns? More so The Rock. Only time will tell as we go into 2024. But Cody Rhodes, all this stuff, his title reign, not looking too pleasingly. He did his thing in the beginning of the year. It carried WWE throughout 2024. Credit where credit is due. I mean, that's just kind of the default job of a WWE champion. But between the ratings, between the dragging down of where the company is at now compared to where it was at when Roman Reigns was on top, is absolutely notable. And hopefully going into 2025, they fix that immediately. So I lied. Technically speaking, I said I was going to do that in one shot. Had to pause it because I had to, kind of edit that into the video. Well, technically I didn't really edit anything. I'm probably gonna edit it tomorrow or make up some fucking excuse and then edit the next day. Probably make up some fucking excuse because I'm recording all this directly after Dynamite. This is like maybe 2 or 3 hours after I just did the review for Dynamite. I have technically not yet edited in the vocals, layered the vocals. Whatever. Shut the fuck up. You don't need to know my editing process and bitch ass nigga. Let's get to the Vince McMahon allegations because that's the next largest story of the year. So, as you guys know, Vince McMahon in 2022 had a lot of trials and tribulations, right? He was being kicked to the curb because apparently he was using company expenditures to pay off all of his allegations, allegeders, victimers, all those good fucking time things, right? Unfortunately, he decided to grow out a mustache, come back into the company, and cause all fucking mayhem and havoc and mischief. He ended up, from what it looks like, I know technically speaking, she put out this whole little fucking notation saying, hey, I stepped down as one of the people at the board of directors or all this other kind of Stephanie McMahon, his daughter, right? But from what it looks like, it seems like Vince has kind of, pushed himself through the doors and said, everybody get the fuck out of the way, okay? You need to fucking clear, okay? I'm a bulldozer and that's some trees directly in front of my way. I need to bulldoze this. I need to make this into a parking lot and you guys are standing in my way. So Vince, technically, obviously, one more time, gotta say, Stephanie technically said it on social media, but it's pretty clear Vince told her to step down, right? I think we're pretty much at that conclusion. And he probably did the same thing to Triple H also and took over the day-to-day operations because he wanted to make sure that WWE was in a prime position where he can make the most beneficial fucking profit from a maximum standpoint that it could possibly make while it starts to transition the company into the hands of TKO. Now, before TKO was a buyer, there were some other people who wanted to, kind of tip their toes inside of the WWE pool as far as the financial aspect. One of them being the Saudi Prince and all the stuff that went throughout 2023 that I went on to fucking report on because everybody did it first, and like a dumb fuck, I did it right behind them, and I was absolutely fucking wrong. Obviously, TKO owns WWE, so I'm fucking wrong. Shut the fuck up. But all this stuff was going down, and it seems like Vince's days were pretty much numbered no matter what he wanted to do to stay in the company, right? Unfortunately, you had the TKO president, Ario Manuel, whatever his name is, who was pretty much one of Vince McMahon's guys on his side to keep him in that position, right? Allegedly, he says something along the lines of, if Vince isn't a part of the deal, he doesn't want to make a deal. And Vince was a part of the deal, so he made the deal. Until, unfortunately, like a car side-swiping in some Need for Speed Underground video game, there were some allegations that came out. Now, these were already notated. Again, we had allegations upon allegations upon allegations, stretching almost 40 years fucking with Vince McMahon, right? But this allegation was a little bit different, right? There was a little bit of a disclaimer that was on top of this allegation that kind of separates it from the rest of the pack. So it was this chick named Janelle Grant, and she ended up lambasting Vince McMahon and everybody who was part of Vince McMahon's entourage who treated her dirty, literally and figuratively. It came out that Vince McMahon ended up sex trafficking this chick and apparently doing a bunch of shitty things to her. Yeah, I went there. What you gonna do about it, pussy? Yeah, he ended up shitting on her head and apparently passing her around, and now this is alleged. They're still in court. They've been in court this entire year. The proceedings have been going back and forth as far as pausing and continuing and pausing and continuing and pausing and continuing. And Vince McMahon, he's kept himself busy, trying to do startup wrestling companies or whatever the fuck he's doing nowadays that apparently isn't really picking up any momentum. But people did go down along with Vince McMahon because of these allegations. One of them being John Laurinaitis, and another one being Brock Lesnar, who apparently was being passed off. Well, fucking Janelle, that is, being passed off to Brock Lesnar to be used by him in manners that was appropriate to him via Vince McMahon, giving her instructions to do so. Allegedly, by the way, allegedly. And apparently, Janelle Grant sent Brock a video of her pissing, which apparently Brock Lesnar was trying to schedule to meet up with Janelle Grant to maybe perform some activities with her. And unfortunately, apparently there was a storm that happened that kind of cock blocked the shot of Brock Lesnar, right? Kind of, or did I say cock Brock? Rim shot. Just like Janelle Grant did to Vince McMahon, gave him a rim shot also. But nevertheless, though, these little things were pretty much going on, and it put the kibosh on Vince McMahon and what momentum he had left, if any, going through the day-to-day operations in WWE. And there was just a bunch of turmoil, a bunch of bullshit. Apparently sponsors were pulling out left and right. People were pissed off. People were angry. People wanted to boycott WWE. And they ended up breaking ties with Vince McMahon. Just completely just Benoit the shit out of him. Ironically enough, just Benoit the fuck out of Vince McMahon, right? Didn't want anything to do with him. I mean, they did eventually, although I'm not sure if WWE had an affiliation with it outside of the people who took place and took part of the interviews in themselves. They ended up releasing the 6-part documentary on Netflix, which, by the way, I do have on my my playlist. I'm not gonna link in the description box because it's a separate video. I should, but I'm not gonna do it. Don't want to push things that are irrelevant compared to the actual video in itself, although it's technically relevant. Just go with the fucking flow and shut up. They ended up releasing this 6-part documentary video of Vince McMahon, apparently, just revealing all the stuff that he's been doing in his past, stuff that we're already pretty much aware of. I don't remember hearing anything that was relatively new. I mean, that was super duper disparaging and fucked up. But apparently all these things kind of made Vince number one persona de grata. How do you say it? Persona grata el grata? Whatever, bro. I'm fucking having a mindfuck right now. My brain is dying. I'm dead brain. I'm brain dead. See? Did it again. And Vince McMahon, he's essentially no longer a part of WWE in any way, shape, or possible. And almost every position that he had, someone has took over, and they have essentially done all the things that Vince McMahon would not have done, nor would he have even perceived or considered doing, because Vince McMahon is completely different from all the people who are currently in the positions that are taking over his day-to-day operations. But the Vince McMahon allegations, one of the biggest stories of 2024, and something that we absolutely did not see coming, or maybe I should speak for myself and say that I didn't absolutely see coming, but happened nonetheless. The third biggest story of the year, in my opinion, is that interview, that gosh darn Phil Brooks, that mother-loving CM Punk. Oh boy, he's a thorn in the Tony Khan side. Am I right? Gosh darn it, am I right? So, to go over this like for the billionth time, but this time I'm not going to go into full details. You know you should do? You should go check out my 50 most controversial moments in professional wrestling history, where I go into depth into this entire fucking conundrum regarding CM Punk and AEW. You should go do that right now and stop being a bitch nigga. Actually, don't do that now. Watch this video and then come back and watch it. Or pause this video and go watch that, but then bring your bitch ass back here and finish watching this video. Nevertheless, though, as we know with CM Punk and Tony Khan and AEW, they have a bit of a rocky relationship, right? Well, unfortunately, after that whole rocky relationship that has happened with CM Punk and the company for over 2 years, it landed CM Punk in the hot seat with Mr. Ariel Helwani, where they ended up shooting the shit with each other. They ended up going back and forth. They ended up asking questions about CM Punk and his whereabouts currently at the current time during that time. And they wanted to dig a little bit deeper and ask CM Punk about what the fuck happened really in AEW. And CM Punk went into depth and he started to pretty much kind of give the dirt, very hesitant in some occurrences, but for the most part, he gave his point of view as to how everything went down throughout AEW during his tenure in the company, right? And he ended up talking about his experiences with Heyman Adam Page, which what kicked off all this, and they ended up being a domino effect, essentially saying that he had no problem with the things that Heyman Adam Page was saying. But even, as a matter of fact, he even said that he didn't even mind it necessarily him sticking up for Colt Cabana, because he respects the fact that someone goes out of their way to stick up for their friend. The only problem is you're doing it at the expense of CM Punk, and you're doing it at the expense of a house that he ended up drawing. He didn't even mind the words necessarily. What he hated though was the fact that Heyman Adam Page ended up going off script, and he damn near embarrassed CM Punk, made him look bad because Punk didn't necessarily have a rebuttal, or at the very least wasn't prepared for what Heyman Adam Page said, which is what set CM Punk off. And on top of that also, you have the Young Bucks and all these people allegedly spreading rumors about CM Punk, which is probably what gave Heyman Adam Page the incentive to want to go after him in this manner. And CM Punk is pretty much fed up with all the bullshit. He's fed up with all the rumors. He's fed up with all the slander. He's fed up with Tony Khan not doing his damn job and pretty much keeping people in check and all this other fucking shebang bang thinking man bullshit, right? Which inevitably, obviously, started off all the all-in shit. What's it called? Brawl Out? Brawl Out. Let's go with that. And then that inevitably that went all throughout the fucking year. And then Punk came back and shit still wasn't really solved. Punk, all he wanted to do was get everybody at the table to talk shit out. Instead, Tony Khan made shit a hell of a lot more difficult, and he created collision off the back of CM Punk, obviously through the Turner Broadcasting executives who told him to do that. But Tony Khan had the bright idea to, rather than bring everybody to the table like fucking adults and, you know, draw money like CM Punk wanted to do, because he was all about business and he didn't give a shit about friends or any of these people. He just wanted to make the most money possible for the house and for himself. Instead, Tony Khan decided to do a soft brand split, and he gave CM Punk Collision and the Elite Dynamite, which obviously brought more problems that could have easily been cut out if Tony would have just done his fucking job, which inevitably brought CM Punk to the point where he had to confront all his problems, and it spilled over, and we ended up getting Brawl In Part 2, right? The sequel, never better than the prequel. But this was a good episode. I like this part 2, right? This part 2 is pretty good, right? The conclusion ended up with CM Punk getting fired from AEW, which, like I said, we come to present time, right? And it ends up having CM Punk sit in the hot seat and having to talk to Ariel Helwani about all the shit that went down. As I said before, he explains himself. He starts to talk about the Vince McMahon stuff and how his time went in WWE, but more in particular the AEW stuff, where he pretty much told the truth. Essentially, he essentially said all the things that went down were highly exaggerated, some just flat out lies, like Tony Khan saying that he feared for his life, bullshit like that CM Punk pretty much put out there. He essentially said things such as Tony Khan and AEW, they're not in the business of actually making money, they're in the business of impressing people like Dave Meltzer, which we all fucking know happens to be true. One of the quotes he ended up saying was something along the lines, not verbatim, but something along the lines of, these guys care more about getting 5-star matches for some goof than they do actually making money, you know, something along the lines of what, like if the building is half empty yet you got 5 stars versus the building actually being full, then we're not in the same business. Again, I'm not speaking verbatim here, but essentially he just completely embarrassed AEW, right? Completely annihilated them, fucked them all the way goddamn up, right? Unfortunately, Tony Khan and the rest of the marks that work for his company, they thought that the best decision, the best response to all of this was to essentially air the footage that got CM Punk fired like 8 or 9 months prior to that, and they thought to themselves that somehow, some way this was a good idea, which they ended up doing. And essentially everything that CM Punk said he did in the video with Ariel Helwani, unfortunately, was proven to be true. Now, the domino effect that had to this company cannot be understated. First off, that episode that I'm talking about where they aired everything in regards to CM Punk being right, that episode was the very last time they ended up getting 800,000 views to this very day. Now, obviously, correlation doesn't equal causation. We've said that plenty of times. You probably heard that plenty of times if you're into politics. I think this is one of those times where, yeah, I'm not too sure about that. Because, again, they showed the CM Punk video, and I can't help but think that turned off a lot of people. Not just the decision in itself to know that you're pretty much exaggerating, and then you still go out of your way to air the footage. What the fuck were you thinking? But also, I can't help but think that people, even the most diehard of AEW fans, who said to themselves, why are you doing this? What does this benefit? Even, let's just say hypothetically speaking that Tony Khan was telling the truth. What does this benefit by showing a WWE superstar on your television? It benefits nothing, and it pissed off a lot of AEW fanboys to the degree where they no longer became AEW fanboys. Now, like, I can't stress this enough. It's not that I'm necessarily suggesting this was the moment that absolutely killed AEW, but it can't be understated enough that you can't just look at the numbers and see how much they declined and they haven't really recovered since. There's no way you can look at both of those things and not think to yourselves that they are related in some manner, right? Which ended up happening. They've dropped dramatically. And all the stuff that happened, I'll put it to you this way. It wasn't just that, because we're going to get to that section in a little bit. But also the effect that it had on CM Punk by making him a bigger name in WWE. Essentially pretty much pushing him throughout the year while he's already in his feud with Drew McIntyre to make himself a complete stark contrast to where he was working for AEW. So essentially what I'm trying to say is you just validated CM Punk completely, right? Because you have CM Punk, who was apparently a troublemaker, apparently a nuisance, apparently hard to work with. All these cliches, all these ad hominems at this point, just completely slandering the man's name. And then you hear about what he's doing in WWE, which is a stark contrast to what he was doing in AEW from an attitudinal standpoint. And it's a complete different, it's a complete 180 attitude when you listen to the wrestlers, when you listen to the people in the higher up positions who have to produce him or work with him. And then again, you see all the news reports that came out about him when he was working with AEW. Obviously, there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance happening here. You know what I'm trying to say? You essentially put CM Punk into a position where he ended up being one of the biggest baby faces when you try to turn him heel. And again, it didn't benefit you at all. As a matter of fact, that brings us to our final big story of the year. The complete and utter, complete destruction of AEW and their viewership audience. Now, just to reiterate this one more time, in the beginning of the year, like January 3rd to be exact, they were in the 800,000s, damn near in the 900,000s on some occasions when you look at the numbers. And as time starts to go on, they're pretty much consistently in the 800,000, just the 800,000s in general, right? Just the 800,000s in general, before they get around, say, once again, the CM Punk situation with Wembley. And from that point on, it just drastically dropped so much, little by little, until you get to the point around July 31st, where they're now entering the new bracket of 600,000s, right? Now they're in the 600,000s. Occasionally they're hitting 700,000s, but it's the 600,000s, right? And it just speaks to the complete decline of where AEW was even in the beginning of the year. Let me stress this again, the beginning of the year, AEW were in the upper 800,000s. The upper 800,000s. As a matter of fact, I'll do you one better. Around this time in 2023, yeah, they were in the upper 858,000, 845,000, 823,000, 832,000. Hell, the October 18th episode of 2023, they were still doing 900,000s, right? And then you go to this point in time, one of their latest ratings. Look at this shit right here. Look at their latest ratings. Now, mind you, I won't look at the Christmas episode because it's Christmas. But then again, maybe I should, because it's not as if NXT wasn't on Christmas Eve and they did around 760-something thousand or 720-something thousand, whatever the case may be. They ended up pulling 574,000 views. And mind you, prior to all of this, throughout the entire month of November, except for one time in December 18th, 2 weeks ago, or I guess last week, they've been in the 500,000s. The 500,000s. This point right here versus where they were at, say, about a year and some change, they dropped nearly half of their viewership audience. Nearly half. They're averaging in the 500,000s for the past couple of weeks now. The average is around, the median is 500,000 something. Probably around 560 something thousand. Whereas they kicked off the year, their average was around 800 something thousand. Completely devoided. Just like that. 300,000 fans gone. From a number that we considered to be the death of them just over a year ago. It's crazy to see the decline in the company from a metric standpoint. And unfortunately, it's only going to get worse from here, because you have people who are in complete denial, like a Dave Meltzer, who has literally spent this entire 2024 making a complete clown of himself. Like I said earlier, when going over the smaller news reports and talking about Dave Meltzer and his credibility being completely and utterly fucking shot, it gets so much worse when you talk about how he is covered, the outright bias of how he has covered AEW. It needs to be studied. It needs to be studied in journalism to give the exact example as to what to not do when you're a journalist. The amount of excuses that he pulled out of his ass to make AEW seem relevant, it is mind-boggling. It is almost disturbing in some cases. The lengths that this man went to in order to make AEW seem viable. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the sad part about it is, it's not as if they don't have the tools. It's just they don't know how to use the tools. And they've been dying, decreasing rapidly. I don't think they have ever fallen from a year-to-year basis. We're talking about from January 1st to December 31st. I don't think they've ever had a drop like this. Not to this degree. You got to think about it. Like I said, think about this for a second. Their peak numbers was around, 1 to 1.1 million views? As far as peak average, not peak number, but peak average. Was 1 million to 1.1, right? Around 2021, 2022-ish. And think about that. That's 2021 when they were getting 1 million more consistently. Let's just say consistently, right? And 800,000 was just this year alone. So it took them about 3 years to drop 300,000, more or less. It took them 1 full year to do what they did in 3 years as far as the declining rate. That's why it boggles my mind whenever I hear people talk about cable television and all this shit when referencing AEW. That doesn't make any sense. What cable television is going to, you got to make this make sense. Did the same stuff, technology and all the platforms that existed today, did they not exist in 2021? Why did it take them 3 years from 2021 to 2024 to drop practically at the same rate that they dropped in 1 full year in 2024? Make it make sense. But that's the problem. They spent the entire year making excuses. Not one thing has worked this year. The 3 biggest angles from a world championship standpoint that they tried to pull off this entire year was the takeover angle from Adam Cole and his dumb fuck friends, the United Kingdom or the Undisputed Kingdom, and getting that fucking confused throughout the entire year also, which is a complete failure, right? Abject fucking failure. Then they tried the same thing with the Elite Boys, right? Jack Perry, Kazuchika Okada, the Young Bucks, complete failure. Now they're trying it again with the Dick Riders. Complete failure as of right now. This company has been dying at a rapid rate that has been just... To say that the rate that AEW has been dying as of this entire year, I said this about Dave Meltzer, but also about this company too. It should be studied. It should be studied. And like I said, the amount of excuses that they make in order to overcome the atrocities that they have committed with this company in regards to just completely and utterly fucking it up, to do the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again as if it's going to change the results on the surface level. It's crazy. It's absolute fucking crazy. And I expect them to be no different going into 2025. To think, I never even thought about that. They dropped at the exact same rate this year alone compared to 2021 and 2024. It's mind-boggling. It needs to be studied. But for the most part, that's all the big news that happened throughout 2024, right? Not anything that was as substantial. It really started off really big in like the beginning between January and April. And then once you get around May, it started to drastically slow down as far as the big news are considered. Things that pretty much came up on my radar were pretty much, as far as I notated, the smaller stories ended up staying in the news for probably like say a day or two or maybe a week at most. And then something else new will fucking happen that will usually take its place and just be just as crazy, but stay only in the headlines for like a week or two, right? The 4 stories that I went over with you affected pretty much the entire year for the most part, that no one cannot stop talking about at all. Compare that to 2022, and I thought they were going to be bigger than 2022, especially in the beginning of the year, but it did slow down after WrestleMania. It really did. But speaking of WrestleMania, let's go over some of the biggest pay-per-views of the year now, shall we? Alright, so we're going to take it from the top. What I consider to be the worst pay-per-view of the entire year between AEW and WWE. We're not going to involve NXT so we don't convolute things. The worst pay-per-view I thought of the year was Full Gear this year. You want to check out my review? Go for it, but I thought every match for the most part was a complete and utter fucking failure. I thought all the matches on the card were, for the most part, not just bad as far as the pacing, but because of how overrated everybody kept making it out to be, even though on paper, you can see how lackadaisical the card was. We're talking about MJF and Roderick Strong. We're talking about Jay White and Heyman Adam Page for a second time when no one asked for this shit. Daniel Garcia and Jack Perry, for fuck's sakes. And then you get the main event being Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy, which had one of the funniest fucking angles that I have ever seen occur in a pro wrestling ring. From trying to pour chemicals to murder people by poisoning them, from the convoluted bullshit that happened with Christian and the overbooked nonsense involving Heyman Adam Page and Jay White, to the surprise, and I use that very, very mildly, the surprise appearance of a Darby Allin who ends up fucking damn near killing everybody by getting into a car accident on purpose to be nowhere near involved in the main event on the following pay-per-view, which ends up being the second worst pay-per-view of the year in my opinion, the show we just watched last night, ironically enough. That's right, folks, World's End, and I'm happy I waited to do this whole entire 2024 year-end perspective review, because I just got finished watching this show probably about now almost 4 hours ago, and oh boy, again, I just reviewed this show, so it's still very fresh in my mind, but just the complete disaster, very similar to Full Gear. But I will say that the main event, which is why this show is better than Full Gear, was a little bit better. If not, the main event for this show was way better than the main event for last month's show, but still a very shit card, very overrated as far as the performances. Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander somehow had a great match in my opinion. Well, maybe not great, but a good match at the last pay-per-view of Full Gear. Come here and just completely eradicate everything in regards to in-ring psychology. MJF and Adam Cole ended up having one of the most boring matches humanly possible that ever have fucking blood, why? Because AEW. Speaking of boring, Mariah May and Thunder Rosa had one of the worst fucking matches of the night also, with their boring ass Tijuana street fight that used pretty much no weapons that they had surrounding the fucking ring. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher decided to go inside there and pretty much kill every aspect of everything in regards to professional wrestling in one fucking night. And as I said, the main event, albeit not the best, still better than Full Gear, and that's somewhat delivered, especially with Edge coming out and being a legitimate surprise appearance. Eat your fucking heart out, Darby Allin. The next worst pay-per-view of the year, and don't worry, this won't become a pattern, is AEW All Out. Another show that for the most part was pretty boring. Bryan Danielson had a nothing match with Jack Perry, which by the way had 2 murder attempts on the show. We'll get to that in a minute. Hikaru Shida and Mercedes want to have a very, very boring fucking match. Kazuchika Okada involved in a pointless fatal 4-way match. Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale had a match that literally already ruined the entire premise of the match by Chris Statlander turning face not even 3 weeks later, and her already trying to get back in the good graces of Willow Nightingale. All about let's see, August, September. When was the show? This show was what, like fucking sometime in September, right? October, November, December. It took all of 3 months for her to fucking, it's just complete and utter fucking stupidity. Just fucking utter fucking stupidity. A pointless match with MJF and Daniel Garcia, which led to nothing in my opinion. A stupid fucking match of Will Ospreay and Pac that involved every goddamn DLC move done known to man fucking kind. And obviously we get the lights out steel cage match with Heyman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland, which literally just complete. I think if you show that match to a wrestling fan, it was very hard for me also not to make that worst match of the year. I really bit my tongue. As you can see, it's completely different. You can look down in the fucking pinned comment. I won't ruin the surprise for you if you haven't already seen it. But yeah, this match right here was just a complete disaster. If you show this match to any wrestling fan or any fan who doesn't watch professional wrestling, they most likely would think that you have fucking problems. That show is absolutely fucking terrible. Wrestle Dream gets a tad bit better, I guess, but not really, because again, the finish was so fucking goofy. Oh my god, bro, the finish. Oh my god, first off, I will say there were some highlights on the show, at least compared to the previous one. I mean, you did get a decent match, I guess, somewhat, out of fucking, who was it, Darby Allin and Brody King. I thought that was somewhat of a decent match. The Young Bucks and Private Party, their TV match was better, but I thought this was kind of good too, to a lesser degree. Again, these matches better than the last pay-per-views. That's for damn sure. You had some lame ones in there, obviously. Konosuke Takeshita, Will Ospreay, and Ricochet. Again, one of those gotta kill every fucking spot in the goddamn matches. Jack Perry and Shibata, the wrestler, had a boring match. Mariah May and Willow Nightingale had a boring match. Jay White, Adam Page, boring match, but nothing that was super duper offensive. And Moxley and Bryan Danielson, albeit it was okay, nowhere near close to their Revolution match in 2022, had one of the most ridiculous fucking angles I think I've ever seen. When they take out Bryan Danielson and you have the commentators crying. Fucking crying. It was a complete disaster as far as the main event, but still better than the last three shows. That much I can say. Then you have Money in the Bank, which is the worst WWE pay-per-view in my opinion. This show, it just never got any legs underneath it. You know what I mean? US Sami Zayn beat Braun Breaker clean, which I completely and utterly fucking hated. I thought the Money in the Bank match, both of them, the men's one was boring as shit. The women's one better than the men's match, but still I thought it was pretty boring too, honestly. You got some bumps and some stuff, and I know people overrate the fuck out of it because of some of the dangerous spots, as if we haven't seen 1,000,001 fucking times. I didn't like the match at all. Damian Priest and Seth Rollins, they ended up having a complete and utter fucking disaster of a match. They just botched left and fucking right. And then you ended up getting a boring 6-man tag match with the Bloodline and Cody Rhodes. This show sucked. This show absolutely fucking sucked. Again, it's the worst pay-per-view show of the year for WWE. Then you ended up getting the second worst pay-per-view of the show of the year, in my opinion, which was Elimination Chamber. The women's chamber match was actually pretty decent. I like that match. The Judgment Day versus the New Catch Republic. You remember them? Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. I wonder where that tag team went, right? It was just run-of-the-mill tag team stuff. Nothing really impressive. The Elimination Chamber match was fine, I guess, for the men. I like the women more, but still nothing to write home about. And they put way too much stock in Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax, and it ended up not being good at all. One of the worst main events of the year. Probably like the third worst main event in the year, behind maybe even the second worst main event of the year. I gotta think about it. The worst is obviously Swerve and Hangman, but this one is not too far behind it. This show sucked ass, in my opinion. The next worst show of the year, in my opinion, is probably gonna be Double or Nothing. If for nothing else, just that main event was fucking atrocious. The anarchy of the arena, I hated everything about this shit. Again, very similar to the steel cage match. That's why I was saying I was kind of, I don't know, like, kind of picking between that and Rhea, because this match just sucked because of all the things it did in the match to make a mockery out of professional wrestling. Just a complete fucking joke of a match. But then Nia and Rhea was just so fucking miserable and so boring, and the audience reaction was so dog shit. It's very hard to say which one was better than the other, but I guess maybe I guess Nia and fucking Rhea at least didn't laugh in my face while taking a piss on the business, so I guess but between that, Christian and Swerve, that feud could have been a hell of a lot better, but the match is still pretty decent. Mercedes and Willow's one of the most overrated fucking matches. People keep praising that match. I don't know fucking why. Adam Cole dies in a match with the barbed wire steel cage with Malachi Black. Still the fucking feud that never really resulted in the match that needed it to occur. They didn't even have a one-on-one fucking match, but here they are having a steel cage match. John Moxley and Konosuke Takeshita sucked. All the other matches fucking sucked. All this shit fucking sucked. Did I mention that this shit fucking sucked? Although I did like the match with, if I remember correctly, I did like, Will and did I like Will and whatchamacallit? I don't even remember. I don't even remember, honestly. I just remember that main event just completely alienated me like a motherfucker. The worst pay-per-view match next is probably night 1 of WrestleMania. Now, granted, the shows do start to get a little bit better from here going forward, but this is still like probably the next worst or the next best, however you like to look at it. I thought WrestleMania night 1 was kind of weak. Not a terrible show necessarily, just a weak show. I thought the main event with the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins was fucking fire. That's probably the best match on the entire card, in my opinion. Semi and Gunther. Semi had no business being Gunther. No business beating him. You had a pointless 6-man or a 6-woman tag team match, I guess, on the card, where Mark Henry lost his shit over with Io Sky and fucking the Black Women. Jimmy and Jay ended up stinking up the fucking joint. They had a terrible fucking match. I thought maybe, like, I'll put it to you this way. I thought the match was bad, but people calling it the worst WrestleMania match of all time is a little bit hyperbolic, but I'm the king of being hyperbolic, so what the fuck do I know? I thought the tag team match with Ray and Andrade was and the 6-pack challenge for the tag team championship was pretty good. I like that match. And Rhea and Becky, that match was kind of boring, but from what I understand, I think Becky had a cold in that match or a horrible fever, so she gets a pass to a lesser degree. Bash in Berlin was a pretty decent show. I didn't hate Bash in Berlin. I thought the show was fine. I mean, it could have been a little bit better. I thought Punk and McIntyre in the strap match was pretty good. I thought the Judgment Day infighting, I thought that was actually really fun to watch. Cody and Kevin, it could have been a little bit better. It was fine for what it was worth, but the pacing of the match, but a lack of consequences and all of that stuff kind of hurt it for me a little tiny bit. I thought Bianca and Jade versus the Unholy Union or Alba Fire and Aladon, didn't care for that all too much. And the main event with Gunther and Randy Orton, it was disappointing for me, at least. I thought it was boring. That's just what it is. Don't know what you want me to tell you. I thought the match was boring as shit. Fell asleep some parts of the match, honestly. Did not like it at all. But overall, I thought the show, one of the weaker shows, but better than the ones that we just got finished talking about. But like I said, it does get a little bit better as it starts to go up. Crown Jewel, we ended up having Cody versus Gunther. I thought that match was fine. Wasn't anything horrible, but could have been a little bit better. The triple threat match of LA Knight and Andrade and Carmelo Hayes was also, if I remember correctly. Liv and Nia was pretty cool. I didn't mind that match all too much. Seth and Braun was pretty decent also. I thought the Fatal 4 match with the women were passable, I guess. And the 6-man tag match with Roman and the Usos and the Bloodline kicking off the show with Sami Zayn coming out afterwards, I thought that was fine too. Again, nothing embarrassing, but it's just the pattern of these shows throughout the 2024 was just that there was a lot more very weak shows, very boring shows than there were actual shows that fucking smacked, right? The Royal Rumble was probably another show that I would say was fine, but nothing that was too consequential. And I thought that the SmackDown, at least most of the SmackDown episodes building up to this Royal Rumble were actually fucking fire. If I remember, I thought the SmackDowns building up to these shows earlier this year were fucking fire. But nevertheless, though, I thought the women's Battle Royal was pretty cool. The Fatal 4 match, somewhat boring a little bit, but I dug the build to it, and for the most part, it got the job done. I just thought it was a little bit boring. Logan and Kevin was fun. I liked that match a lot. And the men's Royal Rumble match, it was kind of boring. It was kind of boring, the men's Royal Rumble match. Although I did agree with the winner and the bottom 4 being Cody and who was it? It was Cody and Punk and McIntyre, right? Cody, Punk, and McIntyre. I forgot the last person who was like was it Cody, Punk, McIntyre, and Gunther, I think? But I could be wrong. But that was fine for what it was worth. I didn't mind it all too much. The next one I'd probably say was one of the best Survivor Series this year, about a month ago. I thought that show was pretty good. The women's War Games match was very cliche. Did not like it at all for the most part. Shinsuke and LA Knight, very boring. Braun, Sheamus, and Ludwig Kaiser fucking smacked. That fucking killed it. That probably goes in my top 10 best matches of the year. You can't see it because obviously I have it categorized 1 through 4, but I can tell you this is damn sure in my top 10. Maybe an honorable mention, honestly, too, like number 6 or number 5. I'd probably put number 5 AJ and Cody from Backlash, and I'd probably say this would be number 6. This match was fucking awesome. I love this match. I still go back and watch it. I watched it like 2 or 3 times since it actually aired. Gunther and Damian Priest was fine, passable, nothing really to look at though. And the War Games match with the Bloodline versus the OG Bloodline versus the new Bloodline, very blasé, very boring. I didn't like it all too much, but that triple threat match was just fucking fire. That saved that show for me. Let me see. We have the King and the Queen of the Ring tournament pay-per-view, whatever you want to fucking call it. I thought this was passable. Cody and Logan had a fun match. Gunther and Randy, that match was boring to me. I didn't like it all too much. Nia murdering Lyra Valkyria with that fucking bonsai drop was great. Semi and Chad Gable had a fun match with Bronson Reed. I thought that was good. Liv and Becky, very missable. But I thought the show was fine for what it was worth. If for nothing else, that triple threat match was good. I like Nia and Valkyrie a little bit, and Cody and Logan delivered in the main event. The next pay-per-view is probably going to be Forbidden Door for AEW. This show was good. I liked it. I didn't care much for the MJF Mexico guy. I forgot the guy's name, but it was the second of the opener match, because I reviewed that match in my car. One of the few I actually reviewed in my car. I didn't care for that, but I remember liking the Danielson match with the Japanese dude in the Owen Hart tournament. I liked that one a lot. Zack Sabre Jr. and Orange Cassidy was fun, if I remember. I liked that match. I had a blast, if I remember. The trios match with what was it, Jericho and the Learning Tree and Joe and the Wrestler, right, and Hook. They had their thing going on. Mercedes and Stephanie was fine. Wasn't anything terrible. Probably one of the better Mercedes matches that happened that year. And Swerve and Will, I thought they did a little bit too much for the most part, but nothing that was truly offensive from what I remember. But yeah, one of the better AEW pay-per-views of the year. All In 2024. Yeah, this is fine. I didn't hate this at all for the most part. Another decent AEW pay-per-view show. I thought the opener for the Fatal 4-Way Ladder match was kind of stupid, but all the stuff that happened afterwards was fine. Mariah May and Toni Storm was fine. I didn't hate that. The Young Bucks match I fucking thought sucked. Hook and Jericho, just pointless as fuck. What else happened? The Gauntlet match was really fun. The Casino Gauntlet match, that was very fun. I like that. Will Ospreay and MJF, a way better match than their television match, in my opinion, and a match that actually had fucking consequences. Mercedes and Britt Baker had one of the worst women matches of the year. Jack Perry and Darby Allin was just pointless, but I get it. They were buying for time, but they should have just took this off the entire card, in my opinion. And Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland had what I thought was the best main event match of the year for AEW, in my opinion. That match fucking slaps. That's probably, you know what, did I put that? I think I got that on my number 4, right? If I didn't, I'm gonna put it. That's like my number 4 best match of the year. I fucking love that match with Swerve and Bryan Danielson. They absolutely killed it. Fucking fantastic match. That's the best main event of the entire year for AEW, and one of the best matches of the year. SummerSlam 2024. I thought the show was fun. I remember thinking this show was fun. It was just really the main event that was kind of and even the main event wasn't really terrible. It was just very average and very boringly average. But everything on this card was pretty decent for the most part. I thought Braun and Sammy was probably the only thing that stood out to me that was very bad. But Liv and Rhea was fun. I thought that was fun. LA Knight and Logan Paul surprisingly had a fun match. I thought Nia and Bayley got shitted on very undeservingly. I thought they had a fun match too. Drew and CM Punk. I know people are like the bracelet shit, but I thought Drew and Punk was a fun match too. Gunther and Damian Priest had a fun match. The only thing that really stood out to me as far as kind of was Braun and Sammy. I thought that match was absolute titties. And Cody and Solo Sikoa, which wasn't bad, it was just painfully fucking average. Then we had Clash of the Champions, or Clash of the Castle, excuse me. I thought that was a great show. That was a great show too. Probably one of the better shows of the year. Cody and AJ Styles opening up in their I Quit match with the blood and stuff was fucking boss. I like that. I thought the triple threat match with the Alba Fire and Isla Dawn and Bianca and Jade and Starks and Baszler, I thought that they unfairly got shitted on. I thought that match was fine. Sammy and Chad Gable had a fantastic match for the Intercontinental Championship with a great finish. Bayley and Piper, I thought, had a pretty nice match. And Damian and Drew McIntyre, they had a solid match too, in my opinion, for the main event. And CM Punk getting involved just added more fuel to the fire, leading up to the third best pay-per-view of the year, Bad Blood. Which, honestly, the middle of the card was absolute ass. Like, I didn't like any match in the middle of the card. Nia and Bayley was a disaster. Damian and Finn was pretty blah. Rhea and Liv probably had the best match in the mid card, but even that was painfully average. The tag team match with Cody, Roman, and the Bloodline, I know a lot of people don't like that match. I thought it was fine. I just thought it just lacked any surprises. Even if The Rock did came out in the main event, I just thought, like, even though it was fine, I thought it was solid. I thought they got their point across, and I thought to myself that now, because I think I praised that match a hell of a lot more then than I did now, but now looking at things like, for an example, War Games, and seeing what this was setting up for, you know, all the things that I kind of thought that it would have done for the match, it didn't. So in retrospect, if I can go back in the past, I probably judged it a little bit more negatively. Not to mention, it doesn't really have that much replay value for me. So, you know, I'm a little bit more a little bit more negative to the match nowadays compared to how I would have been that night. And then, in my opinion, you had the match of the year, obviously, with Punk and Drew McIntyre. This match absolutely saves this show. This match is the main reason why you should watch this show. It's the main reason why this pay-per-view is even number 3. Punk and McIntyre was just... it was a masterpiece. It's professional wrestling. It's the best match of the entire year. Punk and McIntyre just it was a beautiful match. I can't say more great things about CM Punk and Drew McIntyre that I haven't already said enough. Just a phenomenal, astronomically superb just case of just awesome wrestling. I fucking love that match to death. I've already seen it like 10 or 11 times. Probably maybe the most watched match I've seen this year. Replay value still holds up really well. So just for that alone, this show kicks ass, just because Punk and McIntyre was just so fucking legendary, in my opinion. Such a great fucking match. The second best pay-per-view of the year, which I thought was probably the best piece of content AEW has put out all year, was Dynasty. I thought Dynasty was a great fucking show. I thought Dynasty was a very good show. Now, granted, they did start off pretty bad. I did not like Kazuchika Okada and Pac. I did not like the House of Black all too much. I thought both of those matches were pretty eh. I thought Willow Nightingale and Julia Hart was eh. Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly had a very slept on match. That match was fucking awesome. With Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly, that match fucking slaps. I love that match. That was a great fucking match for the International Championship, right? Jericho and Hook had a pretty fun match, and the hardcore stuff that was going on. Tony Storm and Thunder Rosa had a fucking good match. That was really good. I didn't care too much for the ladder match with the Young Bucks and FTR. It's not that it was bad. It was just that, like, we've seen so much of it already that it kind of soured me on it. And then we had, in my opinion, 2 of my top 10 best matches of the year. Swerve and Samoa Joe, it'd probably be like number 7, but still my top 10. I fucking love this match also. I thought Swerve and Joe went out there and they fucking killed it. This was fucking fantastic. I love this match. Fucking awesome match. And then you have, quite frankly, if you were to make an argument for match of the year, I still argue Hell in a Cell. I still think Cody and Roman were a better match, but this is the best match This is the best match of the year for AEW. Top 5 best matches in that company's history, in my opinion. Ospreay and Danielson fucking ruled. I don't think I'm saying anything that everybody else hasn't already said enough. If you're looking at it from like a pure match standpoint, like no gimmick attached to it, no run-ins and storytelling, just a straight up one-on-one exhibition, this is the best match of the entire year. This was fucking phenomenal. This was great. I go back and watch this match. The top 3 matches of the year, I've probably seen already like 5 to 10 or 11 times. This match was fucking the bee's knees. Was Ospreay and Danielson. Just a phenomenal match. I can't put it over enough. I don't think I have said anything that no one has already said. This match was just universally loved, and you can see why. It just kicked so much ass. It just kicked so much ass, bro. It was just a great fucking match. Ospreay and Danielson. Not that, people would expect anything else differently. And for my pick as to what I consider I forgot. Second. That was probably, I almost forgot. WrestleMania, Night 2 is probably the second best pay-per-view of the year, in my opinion. That was probably would I say that's the second? Yeah, I'd probably say that's the second best pay-per-view of the year. Probably Night 2. Yeah, I'd probably say Night 2. Because Night 2, they had, the opener was McIntyre and Seth Rollins. That was fucking awesome. I like that. And then all the stuff that happened afterwards with Damian Priest cashing in with CM Punk on commentary. The street fight was kind of I didn't care for that too much. LA Knight and AJ Styles could have been a little bit better, but it was fine. The triple threat match of Owens and Orton and Paul was fucking fun as shit with the fucking YouTubers getting involved. I like that. Bayley and Io. I thought Bayley and Io had a fun match. I think their match, in my opinion, was better than the match between who was it? Rhea and Becky. I thought Bayley and Io had a way better match than their match. And then obviously you have what most might call match of the year. I still think Hell in a Cell is better, but if you were to put this over Hell in a Cell, fuck you. Hell in a Cell is better. Fuck you. Cody and Roman Reigns, which was just epic storytelling. Just, in my opinion, the second best match of the year, for sure. Epic storytelling. Roman Reigns, just him and Cody just had magic that night, obviously. The run-ins made sense, in my opinion. I mean, I would have, loved if Austin would have got involved one more time with The Rock, but it is what it is. Roman and Cody going out there telling a story from night 1 and then building up to this night right here. The crowd was fucking insane for this shit. And Cody finishing his story with all the confetti and stuff that came down, put a climax to what I thought was otherwise an awesome show. And honestly, Night 2, in my opinion, is kind of what saved WrestleMania, because Night 1 was pretty ass cheeks, and then here you have Night 2, which is a complete opposite from Night 1. They just go out there and they just absolutely slam dunk the fuck out of this card. I thought Night 2 was fucking awesome, which is kind of weird because Night 1 is typically the better of the WrestleManias. Night 2 just went out there and it just proved as to why it had to break that stereotype. And in my opinion, the best pay-per-view of the year, Backlash France. I thought the street fight match and the opener was fucking the bee's knees with Randy and Kevin versus the Bloodline. Obviously, the fans completely make the show way more memorable than it otherwise would have been. I mean, the show was already great as is, in my opinion, but then the fans, by far the best international crowd, arguably of all time. This crowd is just fucking crazy. They were energized throughout the entire night. This crowd was I don't even know what you would call it, bro. I don't even know what you would say. They need to go back to France. I think that's what it is. They just need to go back to France. This crowd was fucking insane, bro. But that And what else would I say about this card? This card was so fucking good though, man. You had Bayley, Naomi, and Tiffany Stratton. They had a fucking fun ass match. I thought their match was awesome too. Damian Priest and Jey Uso. Maybe in my opinion, nah, they had a solid match too. I was gonna say maybe they had the worst match of the night, but I guess that probably go to Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill versus the Kabuki Warriors. But even then, I thought their match was fun too. I think people gave that match a lot more shit than it deserved. But maybe because compared to the other matches on the card, it kind of fell. But I thought Bianca and Jade looked good in this match. I think Jade botched a little tiny bit, but nothing that like completely ruined the match. But hey, some people are gonna some people, right? I thought the match was fine though. And then you had arguably maybe my number 8. Number 8, hell no. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Like I said, my number 5 best match of the year, Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles for the Undisputed Championship. This match slaps. Match was fucking incredible. A nice showing from Cody Rhodes coming off of the win from Roman Reigns. He had a streak. He was on fucking fire. The only thing that I wish would have happened with Cody and AJ had nothing to do with the match in itself, but it had more to do with the build. The build for this match was fucking garbage. I hated the build. The build was fucking trash. But the match in itself, fucking masterpiece. Absolute fucking masterpiece. And in my opinion, you had a fucking just a slamming fucking opener, a slamming fucking closure, and the middle of the card was not half bad also, especially with that triple threat match with Naomi, Bayley, and Tiffany. They had a decent run, but Damian and Jay had a decent run too. I just thought the overall card was just fucking great. I thought they went out there. No match really underdelivered or underperformed. I think this was the most consistent card of the entire year, hence why I think it's the best pay-per-view of the entire year. But we have one more section we have to get through, and then we done here with this little pay-per-view retrospective 2024 review. You heard me? Let's go through the top 10 MVPs of the year. Alright, from what I consider my top 10 MVPs of the year, honorable mention real quick is going to go to Seth Rollins. I maybe would have done or gave him a little bit higher because of what he did going into WrestleMania. I thought that was substantial. And you know, he has been a lot better from a character development standpoint going throughout the past couple of weeks. I mean, obviously it has more to do because of the CM Punk element, and Punk's going to bring the best out of most people. But the problem with Seth Rollins as to why I had to make him an honorable mention, even though he was an important player, especially earlier on in the year, is because obviously he was injured for the majority of the year. And there are going to be some people on here that you're probably going to say to yourself, well, Devontae, I mean, for fuck's sakes, like they played a least role compared to, or I guess you could say a literal, what would you say, a smaller role compared to what Rollins did. Yeah, but you have to kind of weigh it a little bit, right? That's why, you know, whenever I see people say things such as, you know, whenever I judge the pay-per-views and stuff like that, it's like, oh, well, you have so much 3 stars and 2 stars in there, yet you gave the show a 7.5 or an 8. It's not just the matches in itself. I'm also going to judge things like based off of the crowd reception, based off the angles that happen afterwards that I don't typically include in the actual match ratings in itself, the pomp and circumstances, the music, the environment, the stage. There are a bunch of things that go inside it, because if it's memorable for me outside of the match in itself, then it's going to add value to the show. The same thing can be said whenever I weigh, in my opinion, my tools when talking about wrestlers. You know what I mean? When I see them knowing how to cut a promo, and they know how to wrestle, and they have a certain gimmick or a certain presentation about them, a certain aura, some kind of charisma attached to them, the extracurricular activities, their name value, all that stuff plays a factor, right? And if one, for an example, outweighs the other dramatically, then I'm typically gonna pick that superstar that has one little criteria that outweighs everything else dramatically versus another superstar who has none of the criterias that outweigh the other dramatically, but they're just average throughout the board, right? It's like, for an example, you look at someone and they have, say, a CD, CB, right? Versus a person who has AAABD, F. I'm probably going to go with the AAAABDF, even though they have an actual failing grade and the other person doesn't have an actual failing grade. Their performances are a lot more consistent compared to the other person's performance, which is average at best. You know what I mean? That's how I look at this. So we go to Jey Uso for an example, who's number 10, and he's very, very charismatic. He carried himself well. People, for an example, are going to probably say something on the lines of, well, Devontae, his matches were pretty ass cheeks this year. Yes, and you're probably going to say he's very complacent and he kind of does the same thing over and over again. His shtick is getting old, the yeet stuff. But, in my opinion, when you see him on television, he has an aura. He has charisma. He gets people involved. It's never quiet when Jey Uso is around. I look at that and I say to myself, credibility. As long as you give him something to work with story-wise, his credibility aligns with whatever you give him to work with on top of the things that he brings to the table. It's the complete opposite of an MJF, for an example, who has to over-rely on all the stuff that he has to do, even though the stuff that he over-relies on obviously would benefit if he has something along the lines also like a Jey Uso in the bloodline, so he doesn't have to rely on all that. I don't think Jey Uso is overused. I think he himself, especially when he won the Intercontinental Championship, was one of the best moments of the year. Just my opinion, though. Number 9, Toni Storm. With Toni Storm, she's probably the best female wrestler of the year. Very consistent as far as her gimmick, her work, the fact that she prides herself as far as keeping kayfabe, I'll always admire. Very rare to see in the business, especially in 2024. Obviously, she reverted back, and I know she's doing an amnesia gimmick right now, but she reverted back to her stupid fucking rock and roll Toni Storm. I'm an 80s girl, which is fucking lame as shit. I wanted to go back to timeless Toni Storm. She was funnier, had a certain charisma about her that was very, very much showing itself throughout the television, and it made weeks a lot more tolerable when watching AEW, and she was the complete saving grace for the entire women's division, in my opinion. Number 8 is going to probably be Swerve Strickland. Like I said, when talking about Swerve Strickland, I think I mentioned this before, but he has a certain demeanor about himself as far as how he carries himself. He wants you to see him as a top guy. He wants to be known as a top guy. The thing with Swerve Strickland that holds him back has nothing to do with Swerve Strickland. Outside of how he actually structures his matches, he can kind of hold back a little bit. But outside of that, I brought my candle there. Outside of that, no. The thing that's holding Swerve Strickland back is the actual booking based off of what Tony Khan gives him to work with. That's what holds Swerve Strickland back. You know what I mean? But when leaving it up to him, when leaving it up to Swerve Strickland to have to carry something, I think Swerve Strickland knocks everything out of the park, and anybody and everybody that he associates himself with, he doesn't look out of place at all. Whether you're talking about someone like Trevor in the undercard, or someone like a Bobby Lashley who's in the upper card, to someone like a Bryan Danielson who's in the main event, to someone that's on his level like a Heyman Adam Page that they can carry an entire show without a world title. Granted, that match sucked, but still, presence means all. Number 7 is going to be Roman Reigns. Kind of like how I mentioned with Seth Rollins, he's going to be relatively low on the list because even though he was in the bigger picture when having to talk about him in the grand scheme of things going into WrestleMania, Roman Reigns just another year of just the inconsistent scheduling that's fucking with him. Now, again, he's number 7 because whenever he makes his appearance, whenever he's known, whenever he makes his presence known, it's always going to heighten whatever he's a part of, right? So that's a good thing. Whatever he's a part of is always going to heighten it. But still, that doesn't negate the fact that Roman Reigns is not there all the time. That's what's going to hold him back. Anytime he's there, it smacks. It's fucking awesome. But he's not always there. He's actually not there more often than not. And therefore, I can only give him number 7. Number 6 is going to be Bryan Danielson. I thought he has some of, if not the most consistent catalog of great matches this entire year. Bryan Danielson is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Kind of filled that void for Benoit. And I'm happy that he won the AEW World Championship just so for 2 reasons. They can have him in the lineage of AEW and that he can say that he's a former AEW World Champion and that he pretty much won every top title in the industry outside of the TNA Championship and maybe the ECW World Championship, but we're talking about the 2 lesser value championship belts. So who gives a fuck in the end of the day, right? I guess now he's considered a part-timer, legitimately. so that's good. He gets to spend time more with his family. And just anything that Bryan Danielson was a part of this year, whether we're talking about the match with Swerve Strickland, the match with Will Ospreay, which those two matches alone should probably put it over the top. But like I said, the matches that he had with some of the Japanese talent, the match that he had, in my opinion, with Nigel McGuinness was really, really fun to watch. And I thought Bryan Danielson was very consistent this year. The only bad thing that Bryan Danielson was ever really a part of was the angles that took place practically after all his matches that were absolute dog water. But as far as the quality of the matches in itself, his promos, having to use his tools in order to get over, I thought Bryan Danielson was fucking awesome. But, you may have a different perspective on that. Number 5, which I think might be the most controversial person on this list, because people are going to be like, what the fuck did he do? The Rock. And very similar to Roman Reigns, you can only put him so high, and you can only put him so high in order to explain it. But I'm going to take him and I'm going to put him as high as I am, or as high as I can, and I'm going to explain why. Viewership, importance. I think The Rock was, quite frankly, the most important wrestler of the entire year. I think with The Rock, it obviously shows a correlation with how SmackDown is looking now versus how, and you could say obviously, SmackDown's no longer on cable versus now that it happens to be on, or it's no longer on network and it's now on cable, as to why it affects the numbers. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, and I think The Rock plays a point, and he plays a factor into all that. I think The Rock coming back with his heel gimmick, being the Hollywood Rock combined with his current gimmick, and doing all the fun promos and just making wrestling seem a hell of a lot cooler than it has any right to be, especially with all the goobers that run around claiming to be stars nowadays, actual draws. It was nice to see a legitimate superstar come back and remind everybody as to what a superstar actually looks like. And then all his participation building up into WrestleMania, again, just like Roman Reigns, not there consistently, but when he was there, everything meant something. That show, coming out of it was going to have a cliffhanger. Going into that show, you were excited, and no superstar did for their brand, for their company, in the short amount of time and the most limited amount of time than what Rock did this year, in my opinion. So therefore, yes, he is better, or he had a better year, in my opinion, compared to the people that are directly underneath him. Number 4, can't be biased, gotta be objective here. I don't like him at all, but being objective here, Will Ospreay is number 4. Maybe the most over superstar, maybe the most consistent superstar in AEW, probably the number 1 wrestler in AEW overall. I don't like Will Ospreay because, as I've noted before, when talking about a Will Ospreay, he's very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? Reliant. I think that's the best word to say. He's very reliant on the most obscure things that people care about in professional wrestling outside of the internet, right? The bubble has dictated how he will carry himself. And the sad part is, it's not as if Will Ospreay doesn't have the tools. Obviously, he's a great wrestler, and he's acrobatic and he's very agile. But the other tools, such as his charisma, it does show when you see him in the entrance and he comes out and he has the music and he does the spray, all that other kind of shit. And his microphone skills. I said it once and I'll say it again. People underrate the fuck out of Will Ospreay when it comes to his microphone skills. I think Ospreay's good on the mic. Would I call him great? No, he's not fucking Dusty Rhodes, but he's certainly nowhere near as bad as what people say he is. No, Ospreay's good on the microphone. He's good. He's solid as fuck. Probably the best microphone worker, or one of the best microphone workers in the entire company, which is not really saying much, but still though. The problem with Ospreay though, like I said, you let people gas you up and talk you into like, oh, this match is good, this match is good, this match is good, and then you fall into a pattern of behavior where you keep having the same type of matches over and over and over again, and you're thinking you're doing something good because you're doing a different flip and a different variation, or the way you're going to transition is going to be a little bit different compared to the last time, where I would like to see more out of him from a storytelling element. Now, like I said, objectively, I'm going to give him number 4 because that's what most people would put him at, and he has been arguably the most consistent wrestler of the entire year, even more so than some of the WWE wrestlers, right? So I will definitely give him that. Objectively, no matter how I feel about his matches, people here say that he has had some of the best matches of the year, and I have to at least acknowledge that. To say anything other would just make me seem super duper biased. Number 3 is going to be Cody Rhodes. Weird, I know, to say that the guy who's been WWE champion the majority of the year, probably the longest reign out of any world champion, it's weird to say that he is at the number 3 spot. Now, although I feel Cody Rhodes has had a consistent year and he's been very, very accomplished, has some killer matches for some people, Roman, AJ, I think Kevin was a fine match, Solo was a fine match for the most part. He's just been very boring. I think that's the number one word when having to align with Cody Rhodes, is that he's been very, very boring ever since WrestleMania, right? And although he's been very, very boring, his microphone skills are still on point. He's good on the mic, objectively speaking. It's just that the words that he's saying is not something that gets you all really riled up and hot and bothered and makes you want to touch yourself and pull out a condom and then bust it inside it and then give it to the nearest fucking girl and say, "This is my present to you. I have a weird life." But with Cody Rhodes, like I said, you still can't take away the consistency. You still can't take away that he does have all the 5 tools, and I'm willing to give that to him, right? I'm willing to give that to him. Like I say, he goes out there, he sells merchandise. You know, I can't really speak as far as his viewership numbers. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can't help but think that it's going to be at the very least average, if for nothing else, right? He is the WWE champion when it's all said and done. And I admire the adversity. I admire having to stick up for your values, and actually all the people who legitimately stuck behind Cody Rhodes, even when the tough got going, you know, with The Rock and everything, and him sticking it out. But it still does take away from the fact that he has been boring the majority of the year. And for that, he's going to get number 3. I don't really value him as an MVP player, even though he's the world champion. Got to fix that going into 2025. Number 2 is CM Punk. Like I said, he has brought the best out of almost everybody that he has been going up against. The only problem with CM Punk, which has nothing to do with CM Punk in itself, but I would like to see him kind of like, you know, I don't know, like get involved with other superstars, and that's going to probably happen going throughout 2025. You know, he spent almost the entire year feuding with Drew McIntyre, and we have seen some glimpses of, you know, him and Roman Reigns. That's good, but it's pretty much just been McIntyre and Rollins the entire year, and I would like to see him branch out. Now, that does take away from the fact that the stuff and the work that he has done with a McIntyre and a Seth Rollins hasn't been fun. Like I said, the Hell in a Cell match is a fucking masterpiece. I thought the promos that those guys were cutting earlier this year, and even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, in these past couple of weeks, have been fucking fire. They have been fucking awesome. So credit where credit is due in regards to CM Punk being able to work with almost everybody that he's worked with, and knowing his limitations as a performer and being able to still carry himself and not overstep his boundaries and accentuate his strength while downplaying his weaknesses. From a personal standpoint, I will never be in favor of CM Punk, never will see eye to eye to him, especially from a political standpoint, but as a performer, always gonna have respect for his abilities. I think he's a fucking great wrestler, great storyteller, great promo all around, and hopefully he goes into 2025 and he continues having a great fucking year, and hopefully next year he can make it to the number 1 spot like this guy, the top superstar in my opinion of the entire year, the most consistent person this entire year, the best wrestler of the entire year is Drew McIntyre. You can have your arguments, you can say whatever you want. From a match standpoint, no one's been as consistent. I'm not going to say that Drew McIntyre, outside of the Hell in a Cell match, has had killer matches, right? But his matches, you can't tell me not one bad match he's had this entire year. Everything has been average. with the exception of the Hell in a Cell match, which that's legendary, but that's another story. His promos, there's nobody better on the microphone than Drew McIntyre, bar none. He's the best on the mic this entire year. Promo wise, no one touches him. It's not even close. Not even close. The extracurricular activity stuff that he's been doing, no one's been on their game. Drew McIntyre, he gives me certain vibes like a Triple H circa 1999, where it's like he's very determined, he's very aggressive. Whenever I see Drew McIntyre, especially when you see him on social media, nothing comes off fake. You know what I mean? It feels like he's very determined to know that based off of all the stuff that's been happening to him and his family throughout this entire year, as he stated, the missed birthdays, the missed funerals, I think he legitimately feels that way. I think he legitimately feels hurt. He is bothered by all this stuff. For real. And to know that he probably feels in some certain way that there are certain people who are stepping above him, considering that he's not been world champion. I mean, he was world champion for a little bit before CM Punk screwed him over, but for the most part, considering that he's not world champion, and he's not really in a spot right now that is comparable to, say, a Cody Rhodes, he feels determined to have to prove a lot of people wrong. And anything and everything that he involves himself with, always it's a certain quality that most wrestlers nowadays have a problem with bringing into fruition. The whole blurring the lines between what's real and what's fake, I don't think anyone has been more consistent this entire year with blurring that line and making everything that he does not only seem important, but the most important factor within professional wrestling, which is making it seem real. I don't think anyone has made professional wrestling seem as real as a Drew McIntyre. And considering that's the number one thing you should be doing as a wrestler, is being able to work people, there has not been a better worker, in my opinion, this entire year than a Drew McIntyre. So he's definitely, in my opinion, for me, the best wrestler of the entire year. But that's just my opinion. The pay-per-views, the news, the MVPs. And I ain't talking about that MVP. We're talking about the real, true MVPs of professional wrestling. That's just my opinion. As I stated, again, you've probably seen it already. You can go down in the comment section and you can look at the other rewards and the other people who I've considered to be the best in said category. I didn't use all the categories because I think some of the categories that the one put up are just too stupid in my opinion. So there's no best brawler, best technical wrestler, none of that dumb shit. Things that are a lot more objective and things that we could be a little bit more keen eye as far as seeing, especially because it's only AEW and WWE. So if I can't include every wrestling promotion, I don't want to include things that should probably most likely include other wrestling promotions, right? But like I said, these are all just my opinions. It's up to you to let me know how you felt about my opinions. Well, most likely having a conversation and suggesting what you feel was the best or the worst of the year via your opinions. 2024 was a very mixed bag of a year. I thought earlier when it kicked off, it was really fun. I thought this was a blast of a year. And then, like I said, once we get past WrestleMania, definitely after we get past Backlash, when we get past all the stuff with the Wembley Stadium footage, we get around May going forward, things got very slow, very complacent, and very boring. So hopefully that switches up next year. If I had to give 2024 on a scale of out of a 10, I'd probably give it like a 5.75 out of 10. Like I said, not egregiously horrible, but definitely not good. These last 8 months were just fucking terrible in my opinion. Well, I won't say terrible, but damn sure boring. The fall season was absolutely fucking terrible, but like going past May, very mixed bag. And hopefully going into the following year, it gets much better, and hopefully this time next year when we do the 2025 retrospective, we'll have more to talk about, more in a positive light. But with that being said, as always, my name is Devontae, aka Millennial Smark, and I'll see you guys next year. Deuces. P. Eyes. God, that was so fucking corny.